It's time for Coffee and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
Holy crap, I don't know who the hell we think we are. Get off our show, idiots!
All right, good afternoon. Welcome in to a Thursday edition of Coffee and Company here on Sports Talk 790. You know the drill, at least I hope you do. We are fueled by Thornton's. I hope you knew that. If not, now you do. You should know that. If there's one thing you should know, it is, in fact, that Coffee and Company is fueled by Thornton's. But if you didn't, now you do. Also, we are with you for the next 3 hours, which means we're going to be here for a while. I'm sure you've got things to do. You've got priorities, but just know you can take us with you wherever you go. Listen live on the iHeartRadio app. Listen live at 790louisville.com. And you can also check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So a lot of ways for you to be able to catch the show today in a variety of platforms, right? So hopefully you'll stick with us. But, if you choose not to, I mean, that's on you. That's something you've got to live with. All right, Nick Coffey, that's me, the company man, Mr. John Alden, alongside as he is back at the iHeart headquarters, and I am here in my cave. And I guess we'll get right to it. I mean, I feel like that's what we should do because I'm going to mix it up today. We're going to have some fun. I want to let people know right now, and you may hear a disclaimer more than it needs to be heard, but I want people to know that I don't plan on talking, about Kenny Payne for 3 hours today because I just don't. And I don't think we need to be honest, but at times I need to just remind myself, look, there's no point in going down that path because as I've said many times, it's really just regurgitating things that we've said for a long, long time. So again, we'll get right into it. Louisville last night, they lose to North Carolina by 16 points. If you listen to the postgame show, and I don't even think you have to listen to the postgame show to I think we're all on the same page when it comes to the takeaway, the analysis of the game itself. Carolina, one of the best teams in the country, Louisville, got down double digits early, and Carolina kind of kept it around there for a while. And then it got up to 20 early in the second half, and Louisville did what Louisville does at times, and that is go on a run and show you glimpses of what reminds you that there's no scenario where this team should be as bad as they are. I mean, they got it down to, I believe, 5 points in the second half. And then, of course, Carolina got back up to around double digits and kind of kept it between, 12 and 20 seemingly for the rest of the second half. And I don't think anybody feels good about last night. I don't even know I don't think there's a scenario where you would view this as like a positive for the program for Kenny Payne. But again, I'm just honest with you. And you've heard me say this before. I said it last night. I can't control the emotions that hit me as a fan. I don't feel like things are anything other than what they are, which is just sad when it comes to where the program is. But they didn't get killed, and I kind of thought they'd get killed. So I guess they exceeded my expectation, but that doesn't really mean anything, right? The current, legitimate, realistic expectation. When I say expectation, I'm not talking about standard, because I think standard expectation at times can mean the same thing depending on the context. But I'm talking about what this to be and the expectation that is there at that point. I think we all know Kenny Payne is unable to meet the expectation that this program has had for decades. So, expectation doesn't mean that, because again, let's put it this way. You can think about somebody in your life, whether it be a colleague, family member, a spouse, I don't know, somebody that you don't expect a whole lot out of because they've not shown it to you, right? You can't expect them to be something you've never seen, right? So expectation, I think at times is viewed as hey, you've met my expectations because you have high expectations. Well, that's a different conversation. When Kenny Payne's, I expect Kenny Payne's team to lose every game. And when they don't lose, it's a big surprise, but that hasn't happened often. There's 10 wins in a year and a half. And, when they don't get killed, when I was expecting them to get killed, they didn't meet my expectation. So the expectation for Kenny Payne realistically is just to, probably lose every game and then tell us whenever he's asked, whose fault it is, and he'll tell you that it's not his in so many ways. So, anyways, the last week's been kind of I wouldn't say a roller coaster, but I'll put it this way. I think everyone has still been aware of, what we're going through here. And last week, I guess not last week, but the last week was a distraction from where we are. I don't think anybody forgot. I don't think anybody thought that the way you had felt for a while now was not justified and that you were wrong. But the fact that they beat Miami and actually got a win that does have value, although Miami's crumbling at this point. But either way, I mean, that's still, again, talking about expectation. Nobody expected Louisville to go beat Miami, and they did. So you had that, and then you had a more energetic crowd following that game whenever they came back home to play NC State. And, I don't know if they played great, but they fought, and they made it competitive. They kept fighting. Not something you typically see from a team that, has the results that this team has. So what that did is it was just a distraction from the overall situation that we're dealing with here. And when I reference what we're dealing with here, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And if you did, in fact, just forget about it and get lost in the fact that you saw your team play 2 straight games and, you won one of them and you lost the other, but clearly it was just different than what we'd gone through for the majority of this era. So if you were somebody that did forget and you try to just block it out, Kenny did a great job last night of reminding everybody, what we're dealing with here. And when I reference what we're dealing with, I'm talking about a program that is millions of miles away from the standard, and an incompetent coach who believes he is in no way responsible for any of it. And another thing to add, we now have confirmation from him that he truly believes this is his first year and that last year is something that was bound to happen. No accountability on his end. I mean, almost like he coached a 4-win team at Louisville and he's a victim. I think that's the way he sees himself. So I would imagine that there are probably people out there not surprised that Kenny feels that way, just given the things he has said throughout. But now we have confirmation that he believes this is his first year, because last year there's no way to, it was a washed year, which there's no scenario that should have been a 4-win team. And I don't think anybody that's not delusional would tell you otherwise. That's not to say that team would have been great. It's not to say that team was going to be a tournament team, but they won 4 games. And there's no scenario that should ever happen at Louisville under any circumstance. So he is, what he said at the end of the press conference at the last presser he had of last season. He was offended. He was downright blindsided, seemingly, that he was asked about his conversations he'd had recently with Josh Hurd about his job, and he was asked about his staff. And if anything, the guy's consistent from day one. He has never felt as if he has any level of responsibility for where this program is. And it's one thing to believe that. It's a whole other thing to say it publicly without having any true awareness of what you are implying. He mentioned he inherited a broken program last night. We've heard it before. He's clearly telling other people that, like Corey Alexander on the broadcast. And, we've seen it. We know that's not a surprise when you hear him say it, but I want you to think about it. Just put it this way. If Kenny Payne believes he inherited a broken program, what would he call the program now that he's been guiding and leading for a year and a half? Or I guess in his mind, half a year. I don't think it clearly got people, worked up and reminded of just like, hey, we need this thing to end. And as I said a moment ago, it was a nice reminder of the last week. We got a little bit distracted with the fact that they did win a game and they were playing a little better. In fact, a lot better, but it doesn't change the situation. The root of this awful situation is Kenny Payne. It just is. And if you are somebody that believes he's figuring it out, he's getting better, he's continuing to work, how could he do that when he doesn't think he's doing anything wrong? He's never everything that has happened throughout his time here, the failure, the inability to do anything to the standard of Louisville basketball as the head coach. He believes all of it is either the regime who left 2 years ago, it's their fault, or it's the players' fault. Like, how can you fix that? You can't fix that. No coach under any circumstance. Kenny's an awful coach when it comes to wins and losses. That's just based off of results. That's just what we see here. That's what's right in front of us. But even coaches who were super successful shouldn't think that. They shouldn't think that they are in no way responsible for what happens. And here's another thing. If that team last year would have been like remotely successful, like let's just say they won, instead of 4 games, they won like 14, or maybe they won 16 and they were like right around 500 and clearly not going to go to the tournament, but that's where they were. You're telling me Kenny and his groupies wouldn't demand credit for that? So they would. Who wouldn't? It's unfortunate. It sucks. It's sad. That's how to describe this entire situation. So for those who didn't hear the sound, and maybe some of you want to, take a quick break from the radio because you might get worked up. I get it. But I think a lot of us are numb, so you probably won't get worked up. But we're going to play in just 1 second here the exchange. It was CL Brown who joined us on the show yesterday, and then he was actually in Chapel Hill, but he joined us on the show yesterday, and you could tell from CL's comments, and you could even tell from, I think, his column that was out today, he is of the belief that not that Kenny Payne's that he is not without fault, but I do believe that CL is using his platform, his writing to maybe not. I'm trying to think of the right words because I don't want to speak for him, but I think he does more than others when it comes to acknowledging that it's getting better, and it is. I mean, again, they're fighting in games. They could have easily rolled over and died last night when they got down 20 in the second half, and they didn't. They ended up getting it back down to 5, and then they ended up losing. But he is going to encourage folks to see the growth, which that's his, that's something that's him, and he has a right to do that. But growth doesn't matter when you're this bad, right? Growth for Louisville basketball, like anybody that's living in the world of like, hey, we won 4 games last year, we might get 12 this year or 10. I mean, I can't relate. I cannot relate. All right, John, can you play the let's see here. It's Kent Taylor who posted it, but again,
yes, I've got it.
Yeah, let's see. Let's hear that.
What I inherited was a broken something, and my job is to clean it up. And to answer your question, I don't really know exactly, but to me, in my world, inheriting what I inherited, this is really year 1 for me, because this is the first time I get to bring my players in and start the process of rebuilding a program. But that's just to me. Other people may see that differently. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. I wish I inherited something similar to what Hubert inherited, because I think he started out slow, but as the year went on, he had a great year.
Couple things to point out. One, he didn't go out of his way to say that. He was asked a question and he gave an answer. And I think he was being honest. It's complete nonsense, but at least, I think he's being honest, genuine. And he's a crazy person if he believes that. But also, I'm really glad that he did clarify. And he didn't just clarify. He kind of wanted, he indirectly wanted to make sure it was quite clear that that's how he believes, not how everybody else believes. But I'd be a liar if I said I didn't have fear that his boss feels the same way. And I wouldn't think that he does, but I mean, I have no reason to believe one way or the other. And I'm not telling you that Josh Hurt is all in on Kenny Payne and still thinks that this is going to work out and he's going to get a 3rd year. I don't know that, but I also don't know for sure that he's on the same page with the fan base in regards to just how unacceptable this is. And real quick here, I know we got to get to a break in just a couple of minutes, but I do want to reference and read some of this article to you guys from Eric Crawford, who I think is, he's done a good job, in my opinion, of, and Eric's phenomenal at what he does. I don't need to tell you guys that. I'm assuming a lot of you are aware of that. But I thought he has a little bit of a, if you guys haven't checked out the piece of WDRB, you should. It's really good. But obviously I can and won't read you the entire thing here. But I'm going to read you what he said here. It says, whatever you thought of Louisville's performance against North Carolina, there were some redeeming moments in the Cardinals' second half comeback. From a 20-point deficit, it was probably replaced when you heard Payne's answer to C.L. Brown's question. And again, that question you guys heard, you heard every bit of it. That's what we just played for you. And here's Eric's response. Here's the part of the piece where Eric, I guess, I don't know if he's responding to Kenny Payne, but after Kenny Payne's quote that is in the piece, this is what Eric wrote. And it's a reminder that it's not that difficult to just say the right thing. And we are lucky that even if he said the right thing, his results are so bad, it really wouldn't matter. But this just made me want to just, put my head through a door, because it's so obvious that this would be the right way to approach it and not make you look like a guy that is just so lost and has no clue about any bit of perception. And again, if he feels the way he's telling us, this is too broke to fix. A great coach should never publicly put it out there that he's not responsible. Even if you believe it, why say it? It just makes you look awful. But this is what Eric said. Now, you see, if counsel is sitting there, it's an immediate consultation. It's the manila folder raised up. Then Payne emerges and says, quote, so again, this is him saying, if the question's asked and Kenny Payne gives that answer, or I guess maybe it's instead of giving the answer, yeah, that's what he means. Instead of giving the answer that he gave, his attorney would essentially, whisper in his ear, and this would be what he would be advised to say, and it would just be the right way to handle it. So again, it says, it's the manila folder raised up. Then Payne emerges and says, quote, well, Hubert has done an outstanding job, and he's been a good resource to me and someone in this business I appreciate. That's a tough question because every program is different. We had some unusual challenges in this situation at Louisville, and we had setbacks, and we were all disappointed with the season. And we haven't always played as well this year as I would have liked, but I've told my players, no looking back, no more steps backward. And I'm going to hold myself to that. We are playing better now, not as well as we want, but better. And I'll let others make the comments on time and all that because they're the ones making the decisions. Anyway, for me and my staff and my players, every night we come out with a record of 0-0, and we're just trying to win a game. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not piling on. I would say 95% of college basketball coaches in this situation would have said something very close to what Eric wrote. And it wouldn't mean that they're good coaches. It would just be using, just understanding, what I say matters. Winning and losing is really what matters. You can say some things you probably shouldn't say when you're winning at a high level. That's just how it works. May not be fair, but that's how it works. But when you're losing at the rate he's losing, and then you say these kind of things, I mean, who could make the claim that this needs to continue after this season? I mean, I know people probably will, and you can find him if you look hard enough, but I mean, this guy he doesn't view his job as one where he's expected to win, because he doesn't do it. And here he is still complaining that he inherited a bad situation, a broken program. And again, has anybody thought to ask Kenny, if the program was broken when you inherited, how would you evaluate it right now? I mean, I don't know what he would say. Anyways, we'll go to a quick break. It is Coffey Company. We are fueled by Thornton's here on Sports Talk 790. And if you want to join us, you can. 502-571-7900. That is the number. And if you want to join us on the text line, 502-653-0790. It's the L&N Federal Credit Union text line. Hang out.
You tell her you don't want to hang with her stupid friends, but an attitude nonetheless. Sports Talk 790. You're listening to Coffee and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
That's right, Coffee and Company here on another cold day, a Thursday edition of the show. Appreciate you joining us, hanging out. If you want to give us a call, you can. 502-571-7900 is the number. And if you're on hold, I promise you we're going to get to you here in just a second. But just some quick takeaways from last night's college basketball action overall. This UConn team, obviously, you know, they're number one in the country. They're the defending national champions, and I believe this is the first time they've been number one in the country. And I still think that if I had to give you one answer as far as who's going to win the national championship this year, I mean, it's not like I feel super confident, but I would still pick them. And here's what's crazy. They just got a guy back last night who most people think is their best player, Donovan Clingan, or Clingan. How do you say it?
Like Klingon, but it's Klingan.
Clingan. So Clingan. Just say it fast and nobody will call you on it, right? Donovan Clingan.
Donovan Clingan.
Just say Clingan. Yeah. So, you know, he came back last night and they had $2 beer night to welcome him back for the students. And it's a rowdy atmosphere. And Kentucky, we'll talk about them a little bit later because I did get a chance to see a good chunk of their game against Mississippi State. And I was a real dumbass yesterday. And, you know, it's nobody's fault but mine. But I thought all day, I talked about it throughout the show, that Kentucky was at Mississippi State, and they weren't. They were at home. So, you know, I ended up getting the over correct, so that was fine. But, yeah, I don't know how nobody, like, chimed in to correct me. But, you know, that just speaks to how big of a dumbass I can be at times. So, anyways, there's one more thing I want to add to the Kentucky basketball conversation as far as assessing this team and really why they're different. They're always talented. They're always ranked pretty high. I mean, it's a really unusual thing for Calipari to not have a team that people view in mid-January as a legit threat to make a deep run and potentially, you know, win it all. And this year when I watch them, I mean, I still believe all those things, but they're just different. And I've at times wondered, what is it? And we've talked about how they have options now, right? They can go to their backup guards, the guys that come off the bench, and they may be better than the guys who start. They're actually guys who probably have better draft potential right now. But there's another thing I noticed last night that stood out to me as far as why this Kentucky team just seems to be different. And we'll get to that later on. But anyways, if you want to give us a call, you can. A lot of me just doing what I've done for too long now in the first segment, if you're just now joining us, just assessing the overall Kenny Payne situation. And I do believe there was a nice distraction. And that was that when they played better against Miami and against NC State, nobody, I think, was trying to rewrite the story and act like anything was other than what it's not. Meaning, like, nobody would try to tell you that, hey, this means the criticism for Kenny and the frustration from fans wasn't justified. But again, you just kind of got distracted, and it was nice to not, you know, think about Louisville basketball and only think about how much they make you sad because they won against Miami. They fought against North Carolina State. Now, there's not a whole lot of value in either of those things when it comes to just, you know, what Louisville basketball standard is. But last night, you know, they lost by 16, and I will admit, like, I didn't feel great, but just an honest reaction was that they didn't get killed, and I thought they'd get killed. I mean, they lost by 16. It wasn't a close game. It was never in doubt, really. But then Kenny Payne talked after the game, and I instantly went right back to, and I know I'm not alone. I don't know if others agree, but it went right back to just realizing, man, this guy is just clearly not the guy for the job. And there's all kinds of different ways you can make that point. Results, recruiting, you know, understanding how important the program is to people and doing things to let them know that, you know, you care as much as they do and you're all in. Like, those are boxes he doesn't check. And another one that's been there, but really last night it was very evident. He doesn't believe that his job is to win right now because he's still dealing with some mess. And it's just, you know, even if you believe that, to say it is wild to me. But let's go to the phone lines. 502-571-7900 is the number. Let's go to Robert. Robert, you're on Sports Talk 790. What's up?
Hey, Nick. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Well, Kenny said that the program was broken. I don't think you can get much more broken than how LSU was when they fired Will Wade and lost every single player they had and hired the coach from Murray to come down there.
Matt McMahon.
They just last night while they were playing Ole Miss at home, a ranked Ole Miss team, and they won against a ranked team at home, and
that was a good win for them.
Exactly, and the Cards are happy to cover a 21 point spread.
Yeah,
so
that's where we are.
My kid's in the Louisville Pet Band. He's only in it for 2 years, and guess what? 2 years he's got to be in it.
That's awful. Poor guy.
He's going to remember his college years as being the worst 2 years of Louisville college basketball ever.
Yeah, I mean that reminds me of just right now this window of time that Louisville's been in, and it's not just the Kenny Payne era, Robert. It's also just the way things ended with Mac, and it's a 3.5 year window roughly, and with that, there are kids that have kind of missed, like there's a prime age when you're young, and this is probably not related to your son because he's a little bit older. I'm sure he does have some good memories of Louisville basketball. At least he has that. But yeah, his experience at the school is not good. But and by the way, Robert, I appreciate the phone call. But what I was getting at is that there's a window of time when you're young that you really start to attach emotion to being a fan, right? You're not just thinking about your favorite player. Like you actually know, hey, the goal is to win, and I really like this team. And if they lose, I'm going to be sad. If they win, I'm going to be happy. And there's so many kids that are missing out on that. And that sounds dramatic and over the top because it's not like these kids' childhood is ruined or anything. But you know what I mean? Like it's something if you are taking your kids to games, or you wanted to take your kids to games, but you don't now because of obvious reasons, and you're thinking to yourself like, man, I really wish this was at a higher level, meaning the program, to where my young child could understand why it's such a big deal, why it's so important. And it's unfortunate. But again, I'm somebody that truly believes that if they do make a decision to go in a different direction at the end of this year, if they get one of the many coaches that are legitimately discussed by fans and by others, meaning like objective people who cover the sport, if they get one of the top tier guys in that group, Louisville basketball will make its way back to where it belongs. I don't know how quick it's going to happen, but I have full confidence in knowing that if you utilize the resources here, you will be night and day different than what this is. All right, let's go back to the phone lines again. 502-571-7900. That is the number. Let's go to Tony. Tony, you're on Sports Talk 790. What's up?
Hey, Nick, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I don't see how they let him speak at press conferences or at
you said it, but I've thought the same thing because it makes them look bad. It makes Josh Hurt look bad because Kenny's controlling the narrative because Josh doesn't come out and talk. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think you're spot on. Not because like it's a fireable offense, but like he's the only one talking about the situation, so that's all people can run with. Put it this way, and this may be unfair, but it crossed my mind last night when he said what he said. We have no reason to think that Josh doesn't view it the same way. Right? Because we haven't heard him, we haven't heard his comments on it.
Right. And, I mean, a broke program, I mean, the way things are these days, you can rebuild a program in a year with the transfer portal. And, you look at who he has coming in next year. He has one recruit, which I'm not even sure if he's coming.
He hasn't signed. That doesn't look good. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, that kid is, and by the way, that kid's never visited Louisville either, which is not another sign that that's probably not going to happen.
Right. And who knows? I mean, who knows who we're going to lose? So it's like, I mean, are things going to get better next year? No, I mean, if they keep him, it's going to even get worse. So and with the way he is and the way he says things at these post-game conferences, it's like you're making the university look like it's a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's embarrassing, and it's time for a change. The Yum Center is empty. The university's losing money there. I mean, you can't keep going year to year to year, in the Yum Center being empty. It makes no sense. I don't know. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the call. Look, that's another thing that people have said. We've talked about it on the show. It's common knowledge, but it's another glaring obvious sign that this needs to end at the end of the year. And that is that he doesn't have anybody in the mix. He finally decided to say he'll have to go get players in the portal because there's no way he could ever get, elite recruits. And then he said, after admitting he would go to the portal, that they can't let people know, that they got to keep it a secret who they're going after in the portal, because then somebody would then want to recruit them and they would take them because Louisville can't win in a recruiting battle. I mean, and I'm not going to call any of these guys, for sure out of here, because I don't know that that's not fair. But is there a single person on this roster that if they did transfer at the end of this year, you'd be surprised? Like, who would want to continue to do this as a player? I wouldn't blame them. If I was their parents, I would say, look, are you sure? Because you only have a certain amount of time in your life where you can have the experience that is being a college basketball player, and this is not a good environment. And I would consider, looking around and doing some soul searching and figuring out what you want to do. So I'm not telling you everybody's going to leave, but there's nobody that if they did leave, you'd be surprised. And that, so if Kenny was asked to tell us how it's getting better and why maybe next year would be better, I would love to hear what he'd have to say. I mean, I think he'd probably mention some of the personnel and their growth, which is true. The young guys have gotten better this year. Curtis Williams Jr., Tyler Johnson, Caleb Glenn, even, he's giving them good minutes. I do like all those guys, by the way. Like, I think whoever's the coach that takes over, if they make a change, if they were to, I would think one of their priorities would be to get those guys to stick around, to be good pieces. Now, not to say they're going to be the focal point, because you got to go out and get talent, you got to recruit, you got to hit the portal. But I think those are good pieces to keep around if you can. But if any of those guys left, who would be surprised? I don't think you can be. And one of the things Robert had said is, and I'm sorry, Tony, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but put it this way. He had said something that got me thinking about how another just clear sign that this thing is broken. And I don't mean, I'm not referencing what he's referencing when he says broken program that he inherited, but I would hope, the university, I would hope, still has the standard and the belief of what Louisville basketball can and should be. Fans clearly know. But your coach doesn't. Your coach doesn't view it that way. He's told us. I mean, he laughed at the question as far as how he could potentially get at least a couple of recruits that are the caliber recruits that Calipari has. I mean, and he laughed at that. He talked about the portal and said, we got to keep it a secret who we recruit, because if people know, they'll recruit him and we won't. Like, what? I mean, this is a guy who has told us, not once, not twice, but multiple times, that he doesn't see this place as what it is. And that alone is a really big issue. So, yeah, anyways, we'll move on. I don't want to talk, about this for 3 hours. So we will go in a different direction. There's a lot of things I want to get into. Jeff Brom added another one after the show last night. And who knows, maybe there's more coming, but they are right now over the scholarship limit. And I would assume that not most, but a lot of programs are. But it does leave you sort of in a tough spot, because if somebody's just content with being on the team, on scholarship, they want to work hard in practice and just get whatever minutes they get because they love U of L, meaning the school and the city, and they're content. Could you kick them off? Like, I mean, I know it happens, right? Like, guys kind of get phased out even before the portal happened. That was a thing, but nobody's left yet, and they may after the spring, and I imagine that they will. I'm not trying to, create a problem that hasn't surfaced just yet, but it is going to be tricky because you have to have guys either decide to leave or you tell them they have to leave, and I think that's just the world we're in now. But it would be uncomfortable if a kid who is not a great player, but he just loves being on the team, and you recruited him, so he's here, and then you just tell him, yeah, it didn't work out. I didn't think you're not as good as I thought you were. Hit the road. I mean, I doubt that's how the conversation would go. But again, the portal is still very new in the grand scheme of things when it comes to college athletics. And now that, it's clearly a big factor in how everybody builds their roster, managing how you make scholarships available when you have a recruit out there or a transfer out there that you want, that could be tricky. All right. We'll take a quick break, come back on the other side, keep this thing rolling along. Again, it's Coffey and Company. We are Fueled by Thornton's right here on Sports Talk 790.
man. He knows the players and coaches, the strategies and game plans, and stadium restrooms with the shortest lines. Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones. Tomorrow at 10 on Sports Talk 790. You're listening to Coffey and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
I was going to say don't forget, but you can't forget if you don't know yet. This is the first time I've mentioned it. We are going to have a guest join us at 4:30. Kevin Sweeney, who covers college basketball for Sports Illustrated, will be with us at 4:30. Talk about the latest in college hoops. And one thing I'm going to do with Kevin is I'm going to throw some names at him. And these names are going to be coaches that we've talked about, that fans have mentioned as candidates that they hope are in the mix if Louisville makes a change at the end of the year. And I'm going to just simply say, hey, right now, because here's what's crazy. There is a coach, for example, Mick Cronin, which is still not a non, I just don't see a scenario where Mick Cronin would be in the mix because of his buyout alone. And then I also don't think he would be a guy that you feel like would get you back to where you were, I don't know how high the ceiling would be with somebody like Mick Cronin, but either way, I mean, a week ago, we were talking about how they lost by 50 points to Utah, and now they're not great, but they've now won 2 games they weren't necessarily supposed to win. So it can change from here on out, but buy or sell, right? I'm going to say, hey, you've got stock in this coach or that coach. Are you buying or selling? And just to get his thoughts on it. And this is somebody objective, and, I know it sounds like at times I'm just like, oh, whoever, just bring whoever in. And that's not it. But I truly believe that if it comes down to where it's Jerome Tang and Chris Beard and maybe Musselman, maybe that's real. Although I don't believe it to be super genuine that he wants out and has interest in Louisville, but it sounds like there's some noise out there that maybe he is, which you never know what to believe when it comes to that kind of stuff. But if it's any of those three, I clearly have if you made me order them in regards to like who I would prioritize, I could do that. But I'm of the belief that any of those three, if they were to somehow end up here as the coach, they would be able to utilize what Louisville has, and Louisville would be successful once again. So again, we'll talk to Kevin coming up at 4:30. All right, real quick here on the latest addition to the portal for Louisville football and Jeff Brom. They've added another defensive player. This commitment that just came in last night is a young man who also was committed to Ole Miss, transferring there from Illinois, and decided to flip. And some people have asked, and there may be some stuff out there that I just haven't seen, but in regards to why these guys committed to Ole Miss and now they're leaving, I don't know. But anytime that happens, everybody assumes that it's NIL related. And, I'm not telling you that it is or it isn't, but I just think that's always going to be the common reason people mention for any commitment in the portal. Because it's true, these guys are probably looking at how they can be compensated because, if you're for sure, the NFL is different because you got 7 rounds in the draft. So, you can stick around and get better and develop and still be an NFL player. But, if some of these guys were elite, they wouldn't be in college anymore. They would move on to the NFL. So it makes sense for them to kind of believe they could still potentially get to the pros, but also know, hey, as a college player, I can put some money in my pocket too. That could really help me. If you're wise with that money, it could help you get your life started post football. But anyways, Tavion Nicholson is the defensive back who transferred yesterday. Made the decision to flip his commitment from Ole Miss to Louisville. Originally played at Illinois and was really good. So in 2022, which was not this season that happened, but the one before, he was a big part in that Illinois defense that led the country in pass efficiency defense. And he led that defense in interceptions. So he will certainly be somebody that I would imagine is going to be in the mix for some real playing time. And now Louisville currently sits with a total of 26 commitments in the portal. And they're sitting at number 4. And I don't see any other. Yeah, I mean, I'm just scrolling through here. When it comes to just the amount of commitments, that everybody has that's in these rankings I'm looking at 24/7 Sports, Louisville has more commitments than any of them. I think 26 is more than they had last year. And again, some will say, well, Louisville's ranked that way because of quality or because of quantity, not quality. And I have heard that, since mentioning it the other day, because it is a factor in how some of these formulas are put together. They do value how many you have, but they're not bringing in bums. Some of the guys clearly aren't as highly regarded as others, but I mean, we're talking about the majority of these 25 are coming from Power 5 programs, and they had legitimate interest from other Power 5s after they left, and they decided to come to Louisville. And you're not asking for everybody to transfer in to be All-Americans. I mean, Jawar Jordan was one of the best running backs in the country. He didn't transfer in. He just thrived under Jeff Brom. Now, Jamari Thrash did, and he was a guy you really needed. But this is what really makes it impressive to me. And what they're doing is obviously impressive. But I think one of the ways to look at this entire transfer situation is something I talked about a couple of days ago, and that is when you look at everybody involved in the portal for Louisville, the guys that are leaving to come to Louisville or the guys that are leaving Louisville to go elsewhere. If you go to 24/7 Sports and you look at the Louisville's page, essentially, they have everybody that, again, is involved in the portal one way or the other. And right now, in the top 20, meaning the 20 best players of the 32, only one of them is a guy that is leaving Louisville, and that is Kevin Coleman, who left Louisville to go to Mississippi State. If that doesn't put in perspective what they're adding. And look, I know some people will say, well, yeah, this guy, he's fine, but he's not that big of a difference maker. Fine. Fair enough. But the goal for everybody is going to be to make sure you get more from the portal than you lose to the portal. And my goodness, has Louisville done that in a major way coming off of a 10-win season. All right, we got 2 hours to go. Stick with us. It is Coffey Company. If you want to join us on the show, you can. 502-571-7900. Don't go anywhere.
It's time for Coffee Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790. Now here's Nick Coffey.
That's right. Hour number 2 here on a very cold Thursday afternoon. Coffee Company, that's us. We are fueled by Thornton's. Nick Coffey with you. The company man John alongside as I'm checking my phone here to see what the weather is. I've seen people talking about snow, and I do see that we have a winter weather advisory until 7 o'clock tomorrow. But I'm not seeing like any real sign. Well, I guess we've got some snow that could come in tonight, but it's going to be light,
it's mostly
right?
overnight, and I think the maximum is like 1.5 inches that we could get around here. So
how about
another lame amount of snow for us?
How about this weekend? You've got a high of 22 on Saturday and a low of 5 degrees. That's brutally cold.
I mean, we've gone maybe, I guess by the time we get to the end of the weekend, we will have had maybe 8 days of temperatures without getting above 32. I think today it might have gotten above 32.
Yeah, it's 35 right now.
Okay.
And it feels tropical compared to some of the cold weather that's
true
that we've had. All right. As you could expect, we did do what, we are, I believe, supposed to do, which is regardless of what happens, continue to, play the hits, as they say, which Louisville basketball under Kenny Payne is everything but a hit, but Louisville basketball matters a lot. So like just not acknowledging anything would, I don't think would be the right way to go about it. But just to summarize my thoughts from the postgame show, and also from earlier, the distraction was nice. It was pleasant. It was needed. It wasn't anything that when I say the distraction, I mean the fact that they did beat Miami and then they played better against NC State, and really the fans being there and being into it like they were was also a nice distraction because we haven't really seen that. And it's a reminder of what this fan base is and how much they care. And I'm telling you, I don't want to say whoever you would hire if you make a change is going to instantly get, everybody back involved. But if it's one of the many names we've mentioned and they come out and they get right to work and let everybody know that they're here to win and they want to be here and they can't wait, like all those kind of things, the things that Kenny's never said, it'll get everybody back involved. Doesn't mean whoever you hire is going to have success. That's only something that only time will tell. But I believe that. But the distraction, it was needed. And it was, it got it to where we weren't talking about the team currently. In fact, here's what it did. It led us to actually talk about the team more than talking about the overall situation because the team was playing better. It didn't mean that Louisville, was making enough strides to where everything was okay and Kenny was going to be here long term. And I was happy to at least be able to go in a different direction a little bit. And last night they didn't get killed, but they still ended up, losing a game that they were never really in to win. They clawed back in the beginning of the second half, got it to 5. And they do that. They do that. They will show you glimpses and you'll see, doses of play and you'll think, why can't you bottle that up and make that who you are? Why can't you compress that and say, look, we know we can do this. Let's figure out how this can just become what we are more consistently. And they don't do that. And that's unfortunate. So I really didn't go back to where I was pre-Miami and pre-NC State until after the game. And then we heard Kenny Payne. I mean, the game itself, again, I'm not happy or pleased or giving anybody any ounce of credit for losing by 16 points to North Carolina on the road. But that's exceeding the standard. And I talked about this and I don't want to dive too much into it, but the standard and the expectation are different things. Like if you expect Kenny Payne right now to give you a great product on the floor and win at a high level, you're not on the same planet as us. That's what the standard of Louisville, that's what the standard for Louisville is. And that's what we know Kenny should be doing as somebody with this job. But nobody expects that because you've never seen it. Why would you expect it? So I think you can exceed expectations and still be clearly not what Louisville needs. And I think that's where we were. That's where we are right now. It's not to say anything's good or, that they deserve credit for losing by 16, but I thought they'd get murdered and they didn't. So, they exceeded that expectation, but that doesn't mean like that's now my standard. I think standard and expectation at times get mentioned as if they're kind of the same thing, and they're really not. in context, I think people do use them as the same, and maybe it fits in certain instances. But when I say the expectation for Louisville basketball under Kenny Payne, I'm basing it off of what I've seen. And I'm not somebody that says that's now the bar, right? And I don't know if there are many people out there that are left that would still try to tell you that, like, hey, they're better now. 4 wins last year, they already got 6. I mean, I don't hear from those people as much anymore, and I'm not asking to hear from them because I don't know what kind of a conversation we'd have. They have their opinion, I have mine, and they're not going to change mine, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to change theirs. But I mean, if you're going to look at, and here's what's crazy is, like, this actually gives me a chance to take the conversation from the 3 o'clock hour in a little bit of a different direction. So let's play the sound that, gave me life again last night. And what I mean by that is it is a reminder that as much as I feel numb to everything, and again, losing by 16 in North Carolina actually exceeded expectations, what really gives me the feeling of knowing I care still, despite how miserable this has been and how numb we are to it, is when Kenny Payne says things like he said last night. And it's just, I can't help but get worked up about it. But go ahead and play it, John.
Well, I didn't inherit the same thing he inherited. That's first, CL. What I inherited was a broken something. And my job is to clean it up. And to answer your question, I don't really know exactly, but to me, in my world, inheriting what I inherited, this is really year 1 for me, because this is the first time I get to bring my players in and start the process of rebuilding a program. But that's just to me. Other people may see that differently. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. I wish I inherited something similar to what Hubert inherited, because I think he started out slow, but as the year went on, he had a great year.
So Kenny believes that last year is something that he has zero responsibility for, because it was just bound to happen regardless of who the coach was, because of the broken program that he inherited. That's not true. It's just not. And if you believe that other coaches couldn't have put together much better records, and I'm not saying making the tournament, but I mean, that was not a 4. Louisville's never had a roster that is a 4-win caliber team. And here's another thing that just really emphasizes this. Louisville's 4-win team last year played the weakest schedule that Louisville basketball has had since 2005, when they were still in Conference USA. And he did have a cloud that probably kept him from getting players if he tried to get them. There's no evidence that he did. So, I mean, when DJ Wagner decided to commit to Kentucky and those guys, I mean, there was no, it wasn't as if it didn't matter. I mean, the cloud, you knew you had no more sanctions. So anyways, if Kenny believes this is year 1 and he's got his team, does he believe 6-11? Like, let's just live in Kenny's world where he's right that this is truly his first year. Does he believe that 6-11 is anything other than awful when you've played, again, a weaker schedule than you played last year? I mean, again, it's just things like that he lacks so much self-awareness. If this is your first year, do you believe that 6-11 is good for what you have here? And also, when you talk about a broken program that you inherited, if it was broken then, how would you describe it right now? Dead? Buried alive, maybe? I don't know. And it's one thing to think all that. It's another thing to say it. But it truly speaks to, in my opinion, what is delusional. And everything in life now seems to be completely this side or that side. And I try to, realize that, there's a little bit of both in a lot of situations that can be true. And that's where we are here. Kenny didn't inherit Louisville basketball in great shape, but to continue to be awful as a coach when it comes to just results, wins, and losses, and blame it on the guy who's been gone for 2 years, like, that makes you look like a loser. I talked about this last night. I think most coaches that are, fiery, built to compete, know what they have at Louisville, would just say, look, I can't control that. Why even bring it up? Why even talk about it? Had nothing to do with me. So we're just going to work our ass off and try to establish an identity, try to establish a brand, and we're going to get this thing turned around because that's what we're supposed to do. That's why we're here. I mean, I feel like most people would approach it that way. Kenny has felt like a victim the entire time. And with the way he operates and what we hear him saying, it's the ultimate sign that this isn't going to work. He doesn't believe that his job at Louisville basketball is to win. And if last year didn't count, did you take a salary? Were you compensated millions of dollars for your time? Because results don't matter, right? It didn't. Why even do it? Why even take the job? I mean, in year one, like why? Clearly there's some sarcasm in this comment that I'm sharing with you. But think about it. If results don't matter, why would you be paid? What were you doing in year one? I mean, you weren't coaching that team very well. Clearly the results showed that. I mean, it's one thing to believe that, but to say it and not understand how it's going to be perceived by everybody is just, it blows my mind. Completely blows my mind. But we'll move on from Louisville basketball. All right. Did you see the news, John, of the Miami tight end?
I did see this.
Oh my God. This is an all-timer. Miami has a tight end that has been granted a 9th year of eligibility.
So I saw this guy was in the class of 2016. That's when I graduated high school. So this guy,
you're a grown man with a beard and a mortgage.
And so this guy should be. Instead, he's playing college football for his 9th season.
That's crazy. I mean, he came out, he came out of high school like when Joey Bosa did, I think.
With Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And if you're wondering how this happened, he had a season-ending injury in 4 straight years. And he's played in a couple of different places. I don't remember where he started his career, but
I believe it was Oregon, if I read correctly.
This is wild. Yeah, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and DK Metcalf were in his recruiting class. Those are guys that we would currently call NFL, maybe not veterans like they're journeymen. They've been around forever, but nobody would call those guys young or remotely new to the NFL, right?
Yes.
There are dudes who have entered the NFL, had a little bit of success, and have since retired because their run ended probably that were in that same class. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah, he had season-ending injuries in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. So I can respect it. You know, if it was me in that situation, I would do everything I can to avoid having to, grow up. And not to say he's not a grown-up. I mean, he's a grown-ass man. He's clearly, he's way older than. I mean, think about how much older he's going to be than the kids that are coming in like as freshmen at Miami. So, like, I understand, if you can keep playing, why not, right? It's something you'll never get back. You'll miss it like crazy when you get older. So I don't fault the guy, but I mean, he's got to know the jokes that are going to be coming his way. But hey, I would probably do the same thing if I'm being completely honest with you. So this is now the college athlete at the Division I level that has played he has had, this is the longest anybody's ever been able to maintain legitimate eligibility from the NCAA. But there is a basketball player named DeJuan Clayton. You've probably not heard of him, because he's not exactly a name that people are super familiar with. But he applied to get, I think he has the record. He applied to get an 8th year of eligibility, and from what I can tell, he's not playing basketball now, so I guess it was not granted. But he would have been, I think at 7, he's tied with some others. But he spent last year at Cal, and the news, I mean, again, he made the headlines just like this tight end from Miami did, because it's just crazy to know that somebody's trying to become to stay eligible 8 years into their college career. But this is somebody that started his career at Coppin State and then played a season at Hartford, played at Cal, and again, 8 years in total. And Sports Illustrated here has a little rundown as far as others that have played. Yeah, so this Clayton, who again was eventually denied, so he ended his eligibility after 7 years. It says that he would have joined a small group of college athletes to play 8 years, and it appears to be the first college basketball player ever in 8 different seasons. And there was an East Tennessee State linebacker named Jared Folks who was the first collegiate athlete to play 8 years. Well, last year, this guy also tied that, meaning the tight end from Miami, and now he's going to play 9. So he has the record, and it's crazy that, I mean, am I wrong, John? Like, are you with, I mean, again, everybody's different, but like, if you were in this situation, would you continue to play if you could, or would you just say, look, I need to start my life?
I mean, that's crazy because I've never been in that position, so I don't really know what I would do, but it's, man, I mean, this guy's my age and he's still in college. I mean, I don't know how many degrees he's going to have by the time he's done with this, but hopefully you'll have a few.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long time. And
imagine if he went to the draft after this. Would he have, if he had a wonderful season, would his age completely make him a non-factor in the draft?
So that's a really good point because his injuries are a factor, right? Like he's not just maintaining eligibility because he didn't play, like he had season-ending injuries in 4 straight years. Therefore, like if you're going to evaluate him as an NFL prospect, you'd have to say a couple of obvious things here, which is he can't stay healthy. I mean, that's maybe not his fault, but like that's just the reality of it. The guy's had either bad luck or probably a mixture of both. He has bad luck and he just can't stay healthy. He's very fragile. But like if he did explode and have a phenomenal year, now that you're seeing him fully healthy, maybe he'd get some interest. I don't think his position is one where they'd be worried about age. But I mean, heck, there's been quarterbacks that like Brandon Whedon. I don't remember what it was that led to him, but like he started his college football career as a quarterback at Oklahoma State, I think in like his late 20s. Might have been a baseball player, and there's been some others that have been in like the service or they went on like a mission trip because of their, like BYU at times will have a guy that's like, hey, I'll play for a year, then I'm gone for 3 on some kind of a Mormon, trip or whatever. It reminds me though, whenever I was in high school, I went on a visit to Campbellsville University. They had a really good program at the time, and I actually think they're still pretty good. And I remember they had a football game during the day, like early during the day, and then basketball played later that evening. And my dad and I went, and it was an awesome experience, great campus. And when they played basketball, I was around the team, and they had a guy that, before I watched him warming up, I could just tell he was a grown up. Like here I am as a 17-year-old kid, and the majority of the guys I'm seeing on the team that are in street clothes or like, team gear, but not jerseys are 20, 21 at the oldest, 18, 19, right? College kids. This dude I thought was like the strength coach because he was jacked. Well, sure enough, they come out in warm-ups. He's warming up, and I'm like, what's this old dude doing out here? This guy's got to be like 40. And I did find out later he was 37 or 38 years old, and he played 4 years there in his 30s at Campbellsville because he'd been in the service for, a while and never he started his eligibility when he was that old, and he played, and he was serviceable. Like he played legit minutes, and was a big old dude who just moved people out of the way. And I'm sure his age was a factor in how he could be more physical with certain guys. But that was when I realized, when you were 18 and you graduate high school, like you're not coming back to college because you missed time. But it was a real eye opener for me that you can be somebody that is of any age, and if in fact you can play and the team will let you, you can start your college career with 4 years of eligibility at 90 years old if the situation presented itself. I don't think that it would, but yeah, there's no age limit. It's just about the years the NCAA gives you and how many they're going to let you get back if you get injured or whatever. All right, we're going to talk on the other side with Kevin Sweeney of Sports Illustrated. We'll talk some college basketball. Stick with us. It's Coffey and Company. Fuel by Thornton's right here on Sports Talk 790.
sportstalk790.com/EQ.
Sports Talk 790, number one for sports. You're listening to Coffey Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
That's right, Coffey Company. We're about halfway through the show here on a very cold Thursday afternoon. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Don't forget, again, we are Fueled by Thornton's. Make sure you sign up to become a member of the Thornton's Refreshing Rewards program. If you haven't, you'll save money on gas. And there's all kinds of other perks that come with it. And all you have to do is sign up. It takes little to no time. And you'll quickly realize you should have done it long ago. All right, so we've got company. It's Kevin Sweeney of Sports Illustrated, who covers college basketball. But I'm a little distracted as we get this thing started. I'll just say hello, Kevin, because
what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm just going to throw this at you because I'm a little bit distracted by one of the comments that has come in from one of our listeners, because I'm having a tough time understanding, knowing if people are being sarcastic or if they're being serious, because as you could expect, we talked a lot about Kenny Payne in the last year and a half and just how it's insane that we're in this position. But somebody has chimed in on our text line to say, if you're looking for progress, they did beat North Carolina and Kentucky, two of the best teams in the country, in the second half. And I'm assuming that that's bait. That's not real. That's somebody trying to make a joke. But, maybe there are people that believe that. I mean, would you agree that's not real substance in regards to evaluating the coach here, Kenny Payne?
Well, I mean, it's certainly treating the situation with kitty gloves. Look, I think Louisville's playing better basketball now than it was earlier this season, than it certainly was in year one. Kenny Payne deserves some modicum of credit for that. He's the head coach. When he owns all the criticism, he should enjoy any credit. That being said, it's Louisville, right? Like, this
Thank
is
you.
not.
He doesn't know that, apparently,
place
Kevin.
where we get, like we don't get to do moral victories. We don't get to like if Kenny Payne had taken DePaul, right? I mean, DePaul's in a terrible situation right now too. If Kenny Payne had taken DePaul when he was theoretically offered the job in 2020, yeah, like I'd be open to listening to, like, yeah, we're competing more, we're winning the second half. It's year two. That's not an excuse at Louisville in my mind.
Well, it is year two, but last night, that's what sort of gave us a new talking point, because, losing is now something we're just accustomed to. But, he said that in his mind, this is year one for him. And that's not that's not something that's controversial to where he'd get a lot of heat. But I just, you would know better than I. You are covering this sport nationally. I just don't think you'd hear many coaches say that. It's because even if you believe it, to say it is you coming out and wanting everybody to know that you believe that you had no responsibility attached to what happened last year. And even if it was true, saying it when you have 10 wins in over 40 games is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a lot of coaches who kind of share that sentiment a lot of times, but it is always in an excuse fashion.
Yeah.
Right? Not a lot of coaches who are winning 20 games are complaining about how last year didn't really count, right? And especially in 2024, look, like, you have more control over your roster than you ever have before. If Kenny Payne didn't like the players that he inherited, he didn't have to keep them. That's not how this world works anymore. It sucks. It's not, if he wants to claim he was being a nice guy by letting all these guys stay for one more year and figure it out, great. But, like, you don't get to retroactively turn around and say, yeah, these top 100, top 150, top 100 recruits that I was handed, they weren't good. They weren't mine. So that doesn't count. Now, just this year where we're 6-11 and I lost to Kentucky Wesleyan and Chattanooga and DePaul, like that, that's where we grade me. Like that to me, that's not how it works.
And what really stood out to me is just the absolute lack of self-awareness, because, I mean, even if this was, even if we entered his world and believed that this was year one, they're 6-11. They're not there, and they played a really bad schedule. So, anyways, enough with the Kenny Payne stuff, because we're all of the belief that that it's going to end when this season ends, and there's no way to know that for sure, but only time will tell. But when it comes to the coaches that are mentioned for this job, names that kind of come up, just coaches out there that you would think would be interested in Louisville because it would be viewed as a place that maybe has some better resources than what they have. I'm going to throw some names at you when it comes to coaches, and you just tell me as of now, and I'm aware that things can change because we're still, I mean, it's January. Things could fall apart or somebody could get really, really hot. But I'm going to throw names at you. You tell me, are you buying stock in this? You own stock in these coaches, each of them. And you got to tell me, are you buying the stock, meaning you want to keep it rolling, you think there's value, or are you selling it because you're not as convinced that maybe it would be a wise investment? Sound good?
Okay.
Let's start with Dusty May at FAU. You buying or selling? And again, selling doesn't mean you think they're terrible, but we're talking about potentially being somebody that could take over a program like Louisville and get it back to where it belongs. We know they're all better than Kenny Payne. So just to preface it with that.
I would buy Dusty, not necessarily as my number one choice, but I would buy him as a Louisville coach.
Okay. What about Jerome Tang?
Buying.
What about Mick Cronin?
I think I'm still buying.
Really? So you still believe, and I'm not criticizing you, but do you still believe that the ceiling for Mick at Louisville could be really high?
Yeah, look, I don't think Mick Cronin will be the next head coach at Louisville because I think his buyout's crazy, and there's a lot of reasons why it won't happen. But if you just told me tomorrow Mick Cronin can be Louisville's coach, I think Louisville's in a really great spot. I think Mick's one of the 20 or so best coaches in the sport.
What about Chris Beard?
Buying the coach, selling the stuff that comes with him.
Totally understand. All right, I'm going to give you a name of somebody that I don't believe is realistic because I have no reason to think that it would be, because there's just no noise about it. But like, if in fact something was in play, I would be all in, and that is Kelvin Sampson at Houston.
I would so to give some backstory there, he has toyed around a little bit with other jobs.
Has he? At Houston,
mostly seeming, yes, not a ton, but he has at least allowed rumors to fester, mostly in my understanding to gain leverage to make sure his son is the next head coach of Houston whenever he walks away in the next couple of years.
Makes sense.
Now, maybe there's an opportunity for Louisville to power play that and, basically do what Virginia did with Dick and Tony Bennett. Or excuse me, not Virginia, Washington State, excuse me. Maybe there's something to be said about that. But I think the end goal there is still at Houston. But it's one of those guys that if you're an AD, you have to certainly put the feeler out.
Shaka Smart at Marquette, a name that has come up in the last 2 times the job has opened up for Louisville.
Selling. I like Shaka. I don't like Shaka for Louisville.
Okay.
I think he's in the right job right now.
All right. What about Sean Miller at Xavier?
I would say selling. I like Sean a lot. I think he would run into a lot of the things at Xavier at Louisville, that ran into at Arizona, which would be a very good tenure. It would get Louisville back where, in the conversation. I'm not sure it would be enough for what Louisville fans expect.
Buzz Williams, Texas A&M.
Selling hard.
Do tell.
Look, I think Buzz does a really good job of injecting energy into programs. I think he does a good job of building, raising the floor, getting you back into the tournament picture.
Sweating a lot too.
I think if I was, I would have a problem. I don't think that he's a guy that gets you to Sweet 16's Elite Eight's Final Fours. I just don't.
Chris Holtman, Ohio State.
Selling right now. I think another guy that he would, raise the floor, but to me the ceiling isn't high enough.
Eric Musselman.
Interesting name you bring up. I'm buying. And I actually think if you asked me today who I think is the most likely person to be the next head coach of Louisville, it would be Eric Musselman.
Really? So the noise is legit.
I think any noise on January 15th or 20th or whatever today is has certain falsehoods tied to it. But I think when you piece together, I do believe he would leave Arkansas. I do believe he would be a real candidate for Louisville. I do believe Louisville could afford him. It checks a lot of the boxes. And I think he would win at the level that Louisville fans expect, which is to compete for championships.
I talked to an assistant coach at a Power 5 school last week who told me that it started to spread like wildfire that Musselman would be interested in Louisville if the job opened up, which whenever Kenny Payne was hired, I mean, that was the guy who had all the juice and I thought would be the perfect fit. But Arkansas, what he's done, in my opinion, Kevin, is he has reminded folks that Arkansas is, in fact, a really good basketball school. I mean, they're in the SEC. Football clearly is going to always be a bigger priority, but they will show up and support, and they'll pay. They'll pay for a good basketball coach. So I just have never felt like it's because Louisville is a better job. And I don't think many would tell you that Arkansas is a better job, but the gap's not like if you're in a really good situation, you're probably not just going to look to leave. Well, it seems like the situation there maybe isn't as good, but it's just 1 year, right? Like, I mean, they're probably not going to be a tournament team this year, but it blows my mind that because they're struggling this year, there are some people out there from the Louisville side, meaning fans, that, are kind of acting like maybe he wouldn't be good enough. I think Eric Musselman is good of any candidate you'll find when it comes to just what he's shown, what he's done, how quickly. And we care about the stuff that Musselman does. And I don't think it's just because Kenny's not done any of it when it comes to just engaging the fan base and letting everybody know how much you love being here and how much you care. But like he checks that box maybe more than any candidate could, right? I mean, that's what makes him the character and personality he is in the sport. And oh, by the way, he can flip a roster and coach his ass off.
Right. Yeah. That's the easy sales pitch, right? He'd come in, he'd get his hands dirty in the community. He'd get, he'd build excitement. He'd get the fans back. He'd go out and recruit a monster transfer portal class, especially if Louisville gives him good NIL to work with. And then he would win games. I mean, the last 3 years in the Sweet 16, not only will he win games, he will win NCAA tournament games. And that's obviously very, very, very important. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to make sense. As you said, it's hard, it's hard to leave Arkansas. It's a really good job. I think Muss understands that. I also think there is probably a certain level to these rumors of, Muss wants out, of everybody just kind of saying, like, I'm sure Muss is miserable right now. This team is not very good. It's the first time I think he's really had a team that he doesn't think is very good at Arkansas. And of course, he's probably miserable and like, well, man, right? What if I just went to Louisville? That would solve all my problems, right? Like, I think that's how coaches' brains operate. And so I do think we could be in a different place on March 1st. But I think that Muss at least is a realistic candidate. Doesn't mean for sure he would say yes, but I think it's worth trying.
But again, on the spot, again, it's January 18th. A lot of things can change. If you had to guess who's coaching Louisville next year, you would say Eric Musselman?
Out of absence of other strong options, yes.
Okay.
Eric Musselman would be my choice.
Noted. And look, fans just need to understand at this point, it's all transactional for coaches. I mean, it is for players too, but Louisville, I think now is not, they want somebody who understands what the program is and wants to be here because it's Louisville. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's all business. It's all transactional. And Louisville's fortunately in a spot where there aren't going to be many college jobs that would be that much better to where somebody would leave. And if they're having success, then you probably have them for a long time. So last coach I'll ask you about, and I'll just give you you can totally disagree with me, but I'm somebody that does not believe Scott Drew is in any way a realistic option for Louisville. But there are folks out there, including, Jeff Goodman, who covers college basketball, just like yourself at the national level. And, he's even said he doesn't think that he would leave, but Louisville should offer him. And I'm like, well, why would they do that? Maybe because I think to me, Drew seems like a guy that people want to be wanted because they like him so much. And I get it. He seems like a great coach. He is a great coach and he seems like a great guy. And he has not been, from what I understand, heavily pursued by other jobs, despite what he's done at Baylor. So your thoughts, I mean, buy or sell, do you think he would be a realistic option? And do you think he'd be a fit?
I don't think he'd be a realistic option. I do believe he would fit. I think he could fit most places. I think Scott's an outstanding basketball coach. I think Scott is the perfect example of the guy who uses the big job to get the Godfather contract extension.
Yeah.
And I not that he is underpaid right now, but there's certainly room to go up. And look, to me, if I was Louisville, I think there's enough good coaches out there that I don't feel the need to spend $10 million on.
Yeah,
I just don't.
It doesn't make any sense to prioritize him, just because again, you could do everything and put everything in front of him that would make it the best offer, and he would be, I think, respectful of it. But you wouldn't be surprised if he turned you down because he's already in a great situation and he's already won a national title, and there's not many coaches currently coaching that can say that. All right, not a whole lot of time left here, but I do want to get your thoughts right now. Who do you believe is playing better basketball than anybody realizes, meaning a team that just isn't currently getting a whole lot of love, but you feel like they've really turned it on as we hit January?
That's a great question. I think the one team I would really point to there is Tennessee. They took a little heat early. They lost the 3-game number. Now that Kai Ziegler's healthy, Dalton Connect has 75 points in his last 2 games against really good teams. I mean, that team is going to be a tough out. I truly believe they can win the national championship.
I know last time I asked you this, the obvious answer was Michigan State, and that was who was the most disappointing team. And they're still certainly in that category. But is there a chance Miami has passed them? I know, maybe they weren't ranked, but this is a Final Four team from a year ago that has a lot of guys back and some young talent in and some transfers. And, Miami, I don't think they're going to make the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, they've missed Isaiah Wong more and Jordan Miller more than I think you would realize. I think Miller in particular.
Yeah.
I think that power forward spot's really hurt them. I think they still have a chance to make the tournament. I think there's plenty of time, but they've put themselves in a tricky spot. If you made me pick my most disappointing team though right now, I actually think it would be Texas, with another team that's trending towards potentially missing the tournament under Rodney Terry.
Are you surprised they hired Rodney Terry?
I'm not surprised they did. I think it was a mistake from jump. I don't remember how much we talked about this last year, but I mean, I was Rodney Terry's resume at UTEP and at Fresno spoke for itself. Not that he's not a realistic basketball coach that could coach in a higher level mid-major or whatever. He was never the head coach of Texas, and you were asking for disaster promoting him.
I remember we did have a conversation about it at the time because I feel like you and I were two people at least that were on the same page, and it surprised me that when Texas, giving everything they have resource-wise, that they clearly settled. I mean, not to say he can't potentially have some success, but like you're Texas, you can do a lot better than this guy and what he's done in his head coaching stints elsewhere. And I mean, I don't know. We'll never know because it didn't happen. But if they would have pursued Calipari, I think they could have got him. And I know they could have given him the money that he would want because it's Texas. And again, we'll never know. And Kentucky's one of the best teams in the country right now. But yeah, when I saw Rodney Terry go viral last night for his comments, which we'll play the sound for you guys later who have not heard it, I thought to myself, well, they hire this guy. And, I think they're clearly realizing that, he may not be the worst, but you're Texas, you can do better and you should be better. All right. Last question. I lied. One more. Best player in the country right now. I mean, you're probably going to give me who I think you're going to give me, but I'll just see if you're going to surprise me. Who do you think right now is the best player in college basketball?
Yeah, it's still Zach Edey to me.
I knew.
Purdue doesn't,
and I can't disagree.
Yeah, they don't run as much stuff for him, but he's just so dominant at the rim. I mean, and the way that he controls the game is unlike anyone else in the sport.
You are the man. I appreciate you as always making time for us, Kevin. We'll do it again soon. All right, brother?
Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
You too. That's Kevin Sweeney. Does a great job covering college hoops for the fine folks at Sports Illustrated. Quick timeout. We will come back on the other side and wrap up the 4 o'clock hour. And we're going until 6, so we got some time left. Don't leave. Don't you dare leave. Don't go anywhere.
talk hosts in America. That's right. And if you don't believe me, you can ask him yourself. Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones. Tomorrow at 10 on Sports Talk 790. I'm sorry for the way to be so cold. You're listening to Coffey and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
Oh, I know this one.
Oh, you do know this crossfade jam.
I know this crossfade jam. For those who missed it last night on the postgame show, John played crossfade, who I haven't heard that band referenced since 2007, maybe. And they were big, or were they ever big? They had their run, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they had a run of hits.
In right around the time I was graduating high school. And I said, when I hear Shinedown music and I'm visualizing like being at a show, a concert, and I look around in the crowd, I see John. I see 1,000 Johns, because that's his vibe. And look, they're good. You know, are they still together, or do they make music?
I think their singer does stuff by himself, but they're not a band anymore. They need to have a Creed style reunion. Maybe they should go on tour with Creed.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be there. I would.
You know, I'd be there. I'm already going to Creed this August in Cincinnati.
You'd camp out. You'd be there. There's trust me. I do not doubt that at all. So we don't have a whole lot of time to get into it right now, but it is something to see there being real sympathy for Alabama football, because here's what's happened, right? Their coach retired, and there's nobody that is Saban. So just knowing that there's somebody new is going to lead to a lot of these guys hitting the portal. Now, they may decide to not stay in the portal and come back if they, have a change of heart, but it sounds like Alabama, I don't think they're going to be bad, because I do think Kalen DeBoer, even if he uses the reserves that decide to stick around, like, he's a good coach and they have talent. So they won't be Bama with Saban maybe, but I don't think they're going to be bad. But keep in mind, like, if they lose a ton of guys, there's not as many guys available to go get that would even be close to what the standard has been for Alabama. So, it's unfortunate for them, but anybody truly feeling sorry for them is wild. And those that cover recruiting, I can't think of the guy's name. I'm going to find him out, because I don't want to make it act like I don't want to make it seem like I'm not, I'm not, what do they call sneak dissing? Is that still a thing?
Sneak dissing. Never heard that before.
You've never heard that?
You're probably, I'm sure that's a real term, but
it is a real term. I know it's a real term. You don't have to tell me it's a real term.
Why am I so uncultured with everything, Nick?
I wouldn't say you're uncultured. You just lived a different life than a lot of people, I think. Like, you are, and this is a compliment, you are somebody that I probably think really since you've been young, you've never really flocked to what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is talking about.
That's true.
You stay in your own lane, you do your own thing. And that's why, you are probably more content with things than most, because you're not concerned about anything else. But sneak dissing, it was at least something that was said at times. And now I don't know, because
that sounds like a new metal band from the late 90s.
Sneak diss?
Sneak diss. I would listen to it.
Now you sound way out of touch, because you've never heard that?
No, I've never heard sneak dissing.
A sneak diss
I like it though.
A sneak diss is where you are talking about someone without saying who it is.
See, so I not grew up, but I always thought of that as subtweeting on Twitter.
But again, that's you being young and caught up in, not everybody tweets.
Of course.
So if I'm talking about you to another person, but we're not on Twitter, how is it subtweeting whenever?
That's back talking.
Back talking?
Or talking behind someone's back, excuse me.
Back talking is like what your parents would get,
get
on
talking
you
behind
about.
someone's back.
But anyways, there are some people acting as if the NCAA should make an exception and open up the portal because of Alabama. And I'm like, you cannot be serious. And these are people who cover recruiting that are legitimately involved in that world that is college football reporting. So, they're the last program and fan base that would get legitimate sympathy based off anything, because you know what? Last I checked, they've had a run that nobody will ever have again in college football with Nick Saban. But yeah, they're losing guys left and right. And who knows? Maybe Louisville could end up benefiting from that. Kentucky could end up benefiting from that. But something that there's nothing you can do about it right now, and I do believe that it will all work itself out. But Louisville is over the scholarship limit, meaning by the time the school year starts in the fall, they got to have some guys leave, or they won't, or some of them are going to be here without a scholarship. All right, we'll come back on the other side with one more hour to go. Don't go anywhere. It's Coffey and Company. Fueled by Thornton's right here on Sports Talk 790.
the TriCounty4.com studios. This is Sports Talk 790. It's time for Coffee Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790. Now here's Nick Coffey.
All right, let's finish strong today. Our final hour here on a Thursday afternoon. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Coffee Company. We are fueled by Thornton's here on Sports Talk 790. And if you've not signed up to become a member of the Thornton's Refreshing Rewards program, you're missing out. I've been telling you for years now. That's not an exaggeration. That's not that's not a figure of speech. It's the truth. So download the app today. And right now, if you are somebody that is looking to take advantage of some savings, they've got some good stuff going on. Right now, if you go to a Thornton's and you use your Refreshing Rewards app, you can get a $5 meal deal. That's a 20-ounce soft drink, one of their menu items from their grill, and then a bag of chips. Which, by the way, I used to say this all the time, and I assume that everybody is just now aware of this because they've taken me up on it. Right? They've tried for themselves and they've realized it was true, and that is that Thornton's, they have changed the game when it comes to fast, or I should say, convenience store gas station food. Right? The stigma has always been like you would never eat it unless you had to. You had no other option. They have delicious, high-quality food that, isn't prepared a day before and sitting under a heat lamp. I mean, there are people who work at Thornton's that their job is to prepare high-quality, good food. So they've got a lot of good options. And if you don't believe me, just try it for yourself. I can't prove it. I can't guarantee it, but I believe you will agree. All right, so a lot of Louisville basketball stuff in the beginning of each of the first 2 hours, just kind of reacting to what happened last night. They lose by 16 to Carolina. Did cover the spread, and they didn't get killed like a lot of people, including myself, thought that they would, more so just because of how well Carolina is playing. But, I mean, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like, that doesn't change anything about the overall situation. And it was nice to have a week of, I think, distraction. The win against Miami and the improved play and the fight that we saw against North Carolina State, that didn't really change anything in regards to how Louisville is doing overall. But you weren't thinking as much about how miserable it's been and how you can't wait till there's a new coach because, hey, they were at least distracting us with giving us a better product and fighting and playing good basketball. I mean, I don't know how good this team is overall and really what their ceiling is when they play well, but they went on the road and beat Miami, and Miami's clearly struggling and one of the more disappointing teams in the country. But either way, like Louisville played well, especially when considering the bar that they have set for themselves this year. So last night, if you were somebody that needed the reminder of where we are, I think Kenny Payne did that with his comments after the game. And I don't want to act like, and I don't want to overdo it here and sound like I'm, the most dramatic person, because it's not as if anything that Kenny Payne has said has been like real surprise in the last, year or so, because I think early on we were pretty well aware that he was somebody that was not going to act as if like winning is a priority. You would just assume that that's the case, but he's never once acted like winning was part of his job. And last night he was asked, again, I think it's fair to emphasize that he didn't go out of his way to say this. He was asked a question and he gave an honest answer. And also he clarified many times that he was saying he was speaking only on his behalf and how he sees things. And that is that he believes this is year one for him. When asked about the comparisons to Hubert Davis and him, two guys that were assistant coaches and then got their first opportunity to be head coaches at elite programs that they played for. Obviously, Hubert Davis has been sensational compared to Kenny Payne, but there really isn't a comparison in my opinion. And Kenny said kind of that he agreed, but not because of how different each coach has done, but he said that there were no comparisons because for him, this is his first year, whereas Hubert Davis, I guess, is, in his third year? Play the sound, John. This is Kenny Payne when asked about the comparison between the two and him acknowledging that he does not believe that last year, he didn't say this directly, but he believes this is essentially his first year and the only thing you can view him on.
Well, I didn't inherit the same thing he inherited. That's first year. What I inherited was a broken something. And my job is to clean it up. And to answer your question, I don't really know exactly, but to me, in my world, inheriting what I inherited, this is really year one for me, because this is the first time I get to bring my players in and start the process of rebuilding a program. But that's just to me. Other people may see that differently. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. I wish I inherited something similar to what Hubert inherited, because I think he started out slow, but as the year went on, he had a great year.
I mean, there's layers to that whole response from Kenny. And I feel like each time I hear it, there's like something else that stands out, because he said this is the first time he's had the opportunity to bring in his own players. That's a lie. And I guess he's George Costanza, because it's not a lie if you believe it. And I guess he believes it. I do believe he is not making things up on the fly. I think he's in his own world, has his own mindset, has his own beliefs of the situation. That's just not reality. Now, he didn't have the best options, but neither did Chris Mack. And if people are annoyed by me continuing to bring up Chris Mack, it's because he says these kind of things. I'm not giving, there's no sympathy for Chris Mack. I mean, he left, he quit. He did not want to be the coach here. He left. And there were some reasons that were out of his control that led to him, I think, coming to that decision. But either way, he chose to not be the coach here anymore. So it's not like I'm saying he gotta, he's not the coach here overall because of somebody else. But do you think that Chris Mack would have been all in on bringing in some of the transfers he brought in, even some of the freshmen he brought in, if he wasn't dealing with what you are referring to? Chris Mack coached the entire time he was here with that cloud of uncertainty from the NCAA. Yes, you had it in your first offseason, but you didn't even go try to get anybody. You didn't even want to win. You just thought, doesn't matter, this doesn't count. Let's just see what happens. Because, I'm already a victim. He entered this job as a victim and still believes he's a victim today, which speaks to how he's never had any accountability, does not think there's any responsibility on his end in regards to where we are. He believes that, and he tells us that any chance he gets. And even if this was, in fact, his first year, they're not good. They're 6-11. Whose fault is that? I mean, and everybody knows that you don't need, a program like Louisville doesn't need years to be better than 6-11. I mean, this team, personnel-wise, and we see it at times when you watch them play, they have the ability to be a much better team than 6-11. Now, how good they could be, their ceiling, I don't know. But he entered this job feeling like a victim because, we should just be thankful that he would even come here because of, this program being broken or whatever, which I'd love for him to explain sort of what that means, broken. Because the NCAA stuff was going on, but the players he inherited, they weren't bad kids at all. Nobody was getting in trouble. The guys who've left have all, honestly, maybe not had great success at their other school, but they've been good kids that are actually embracing whatever role they have at their other school. What was broken? The administration, the people that were here before from the administration, they're not here now. Like, what was broken? And if it was broken when you got here, how would you describe it now? Dead, buried alive, in a coma? How would you describe it? So I guess thank you for continuing to remind me that there's no conversation to have, at least from my end, as far as why this could continue to happen, because the results matter more than anything. And they are telling us what we need to know. And that is, this guy's not good enough to be the coach here, but him continuing to run this program, if you even want to call it that, of the believing that he's not responsible for winning and losing. It's one thing to believe it, but to say it is wild. And it speaks to just his lack of awareness and just him completely not understanding the job that he has. And that's maybe the biggest issue, is that you have a guy leading your program that doesn't even really know what the job is. How can you expect him to do the job when he doesn't know what it is? The job here is to win. And you've heard me say this before, and when I used to say it, people would act like I'm reaching and I'm exaggerating and just finding ways to be critical. He has never once said anything that leads you to believe that he thinks that winning is part of why he's paid. And he's paid a lot of money too, by the way, which is crazy. If this is your first year, did you take a salary last year, Kenny? For what? Winning didn't matter. What were you paid millions of dollars for? Your time? I mean, like it's the lack of self-awareness doesn't get talked about enough because it's just one of the many things that you can look towards when it comes to the program right now and just think like, this can't be real. And I mentioned this in the 3 o'clock hour, and I want to reference it once again for those just now joining us. Eric Crawford of WDRB had a great article earlier today. And the headline is Crawford, whatever. And it says Crawford because, they do that to let people know on WDRB.com that it's one of his pieces, which I think is worth doing. But he says, whatever Payne thinks it is, it may be later than he thinks. I'm sorry, whatever year he thinks it is, it may be later than it is because he believes it's year one. And I said it last night. My fear is that the administration thinks this too, because I don't think Kenny says this kind of stuff unless he has never been told otherwise. And I don't know what value there would be in Josh telling Kenny Payne right now that, his job's over. But also, what would be the harm in that? Like if Josh Hurd decided to let everybody know they're going to make a change at the end of the year, but Kenny will be able to coach the rest of the year, what would be what damage is done by doing that? Are you worried that people will tell you that you were being unfair? Are you worried that people will claim that he got a raw deal and that you didn't treat him fairly? Because if anybody would claim that would be unfair and that he's a victim in this, those are people you can't take their advice. You can't they're insane. So why would you value what they say? I mean, and look, one thing I don't say enough that I should say, if Kenny was borderline average, it would be really difficult because, you'd be stuck in no man's land just hoping that one day you'd have the big breakthrough. Louisville's not remotely average. They're awful. And the results tell you that. And then you throw in all the other stuff as far as like what he says. It's just crazy. But anyways, back to Crawford's article here. He mentioned Kenny, the sound that we just played for you. He laid it out in his column with the quotes, and then he essentially did a great job of saying what he should have said essentially. But he says, now you see, and I'm reading here directly from Eric's article. It says, now you see if counsel is sitting there, this is an immediate consultation, meaning when he's asked about comparing him and Hubert Davis's situation. So this is a quote that's not real, but it's essentially Eric saying what an attorney may tell Kenny Payne if in fact he was being advised by legal counsel to answer that question the best way possible. And when you're this bad, words don't really do much to help you, but man, they can hurt you and really put it in perspective. And Kenny is showing that. But this was Eric's hypothetical quote. And if he says this, it's not to act like everybody's going to say, okay, well, Kenny's great. But this is what I think 97% of coaches would say in his situation. Quote, well, Hubert has done an outstanding job and he's been a very good resource to me and someone in this business that I appreciate. That's a tough question because every program is different. We had some unusual challenges in the situation here at Louisville, and we had setbacks, and we were all disappointed with the season last year. We haven't always played as well this year as I would have liked, but I've told my players no looking back and no more steps backward. And I'm going to hold myself to that. We're playing better now, not as well as we want, but better. And I'll let others make the comments on time and all that because they're the ones making the decisions. Anyway, for me and my staff and players, every night we come out with a record of 0-0, and we're just trying to win this game. I think that is like the base level mindset for a coach in this situation to handle it. And Kenny feels like a victim. He has told us that. And it's just, not only is it incorrect, it's just crazy to me that he believes that. So again, I said this last night. If you're somebody that still believes like, oh, he's learning, he's getting better, he'll figure it out. Figure what out? He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. He believes that all of this mess, all of this failure is everybody else's fault. So how can you look towards the future and feel like he's going to flip a switch and be somebody different? He's operating and telling us that this was all just essentially going to happen because of some big process. And we all know that's nonsense. All right. If you want to join us on the show, you can. 502-571-7900 is the number. Let's go to Dave, who's joining us now. Dave, what's happening?
I agree with what you said. Payne signed 3 players in his first recruiting class, and none of those guys is around. I mean,
one of them is. It's
who's that?
You mean recruiting class or transfer? So he brought in Brandon Huntley Hatfield as a transfer. He's still here. But yeah,
well,
no,
I'm talking about
the guys he brought in, Fabio Basili,
yeah,
the kid
right.
who was from Mississippi, Devin Ree, like those guys, weren't good enough to play here, and they're now elsewhere, not playing a whole lot.
Well, I think Payne believes that U of L is inferior, and that
He's told us that. You're right, Dave.
we'll never. Well, I mean, why in the hell is this guy coaching if he thinks that U of L is no damn good? I mean, I just don't understand this guy.
He's like I mean, in his mind, I believe, Dave, that he took this job without really wanting it and just felt like he was doing us a favor by stepping in because like maybe nobody else would. That sounds crazy, but I think that's what he believes.
Well, I mean, who will make the final decision about this guy's future? Is it Josh Hurd or is it the school president? And another thing, did Josh actually want this guy, or do you think he was the acting president at the time was Lori Gonzalez? Do you think she pressured him into a DEI hire? Do you think that's how he got the job? Or and like you said, Payne, he actually had to be talked into taking the job.
Which should have told you right away it wasn't the right way to go, right?
Right. I mean, if you're that skittish, then you wouldn't want somebody like that. And the thing that's going to hurt Josh is the size of Payne's contract. I mean, my goodness, he gets 6 years over. He gets $20 million, and the guy up in Cincinnati, I think his name is Wes Miller.
Yep.
He got Cincinnati gave him 6 years. But that totaled, I think, like 9.5 or 9.6 million. In other words, he's getting paid half of what Payne's getting paid.
And he was a successful head coach elsewhere before he got hired, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you said about Payne, Payne is so nonchalant. Like,
he doesn't
if
care.
they lose, he does not care. And, like I think you mentioned, after the Kentucky game, he said, "Did you see all those All-Americans?" It's like
he mocked the person who asked how they could get players like that, which is just insane.
Right. Well, how do you expect a coach to beat your rival when they're in awe of them? I mean, he just acts like U of L is like you said, an inferior program.
Yep, no doubt about it. And I appreciate the call, Dave. To answer your question, when it comes to the hire, I don't know if we'll ever know. I mean, that's the $1 million question. Who, in fact, was the one who said, this is the guy we're going to go get, let's do it? I mean, I can't be super critical of the hire happening. I mean, I can be, but I will just tell you that I would have done the same thing if, in fact, what I believe is the way it played out, which is that when Kenny was hired, I don't think there'll ever be a scenario when Louisville basketball looks to hire a coach and they're in a worse spot. And that's just because the program was heading in the wrong direction. It was but it wasn't where we are now, but it was clearly not good. And you still had so much uncertainty from the NCAA situation with Pitino that led to him being fired. And you got to keep in mind at the time, there was the NCAA violations that involved Dino, and that all ended up getting washed away. And Chris Mack got full clearance from the NCAA. He's got no sanctions, no show cause. Anybody who thinks that like Mack was pressured in to leaving because of money that he wouldn't get because they felt they could fire. Mack could have fought that and won without any trouble. He would have not been fired with cause because of a level 2 violation, because here's what the school would have to do. In order to fire Mack with cause and not pay him money, they would have to make themselves guilty of something that like even the NCAA would allow you to plead down to make it not a level 2. You'd have to say, no, we're not going to plead down. We want this to be a very serious charge so we can get rid. It's just people run with that and it's not true. But anyways, but the hire, I don't know who you could have got that would have been like a splash. So with Kenny, it was a risk more than others because he'd never been a head coach. But I think I believe that the ceiling was going to be high because of his ability to recruit and his ability to understand what this place is. And my God, those are 2 areas he's been awful at. So clearly, if they'd hired Kevin Willard, we'd be in a better situation. If they'd have hired Steve Forbes, we'd be in a better situation. If they would have hired Matt McMahon, Greg Gard, I don't know if those guys would ever be the right guy to get this place where we need to be, but we'd be in a better situation. So it was the wrong decision as far as who truly had what level of influence in the decision. I'm not sure we're ever going to know. All right, quick break. We'll come back on the other side. Keep this thing rolling along. Coffey and Company. Fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.
There's no telling how big this could be. Sports Talk 790, number one for sports.
Just hanging around, burning it down, sipping on some cool Jack Daniels.
You're listening to Coffey and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
So some big news yesterday that we've yet to talk about, and that it really shouldn't be that surprising, but the Dallas Cowboys, meaning Jerry Jones, has decided to keep Mike McCarthy on staff, which it's a good situation for Jerry because McCarthy is a comfortable coach to where he'll stay in his lane and Jerry will run the team, be the GM, and maybe even at times kind of operate as the head coach. But I really thought there was a chance that maybe Bill Belichick would be considered and would work because I feel like if there was a coach that Jerry Jones may in fact trust and not want to be as involved in because, you know, he understands this guy's cream of the crop, it would be Bill Belichick. But they're going to keep Mike McCarthy, and where Belichick ends up, I don't know. Would be wild, though, if he does all these interviews and doesn't get an offer because, you know, he's one of the best ever, but I could also understand why certain teams wouldn't want to go in that direction. Again, I think the best scenario for a Belichick hire would be a franchise that feels really good about a young coordinator, but they want him to be groomed a little bit by a legend like Belichick and kind of go from there. But yeah, he clearly wants to win he wants to become the all-time wins leader. And I think he's 14 away. Was it 14 or something like that? 14 to 16, I think something around there. And he would need to have probably at minimum 2 years, and those 2 years need to be good or, you know, above average for him to get that. But it would be crazy if he coached forever just trying to get that, and it took 10 years, which I doubt that'd be the case. But yeah, there's some jobs open here in the NFL, and it's I think it's clear Jim Harbaugh, if he gets an offer, is going to be gone because, you know, he's interviewed, I think now for 3 jobs: the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Falcons. And there could be a potential scenario where you see, you know, another big move when it comes to the college football world, because Michigan, if that job opens, that's a huge job. But I believe that it'll be Sharon Moore, and that'll probably keep, not only will that probably be something Michigan fans approve of, but it'll also lead it to where they don't end up having some mass exodus with the portal. Maybe they have some, but not to the level that they would if it's just some outsider. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. 502-571-7900 is the number if you want to join us. Let's go to Doug. Doug, you are on Sports Talk 790. What's up?
Man, that was a long 12 minutes. I should have thought about that before I called. I hope you'll extend me the courtesy to let me finish before you make any comment.
You go ahead, man. It's your world.
It was interesting what you opened this segment up with. It kind of lends to my point. You say that Louisville was in great shape, but the fact of the matter is,
no. Wait. I'm not going to let you lie. I never said Louisville was in great shape.
Oh, you said they were in good shape. You said the program was in good shape.
No, I didn't. No, like if you have if you don't view it the way I do, that's fine. But you are saying things I didn't say. In fact, I've gone out of my way to say he did not inherit a great situation, but to say that it was broken and that year one would not have mattered and doesn't matter, because it was inevitable, which is what he said. That's what I disagree with. You can go back. Every show we do is available after the fact on podcast. You can find it. You will not find me saying that Kenny Payne inherited a great situation. You're in fact a great example of someone that you hear what you want to hear. Me telling you that Kenny Payne did not inherit a broken program like he said is not me saying it's great. You are clearly hearing it completely this side or that side, and it's not the case. It's both. He inherited the job when it was not in good shape, but it wasn't broken to where they were going to have 4 wins no matter who coached, and that we shouldn't even hold them accountable. So again, if you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation, but you've now said 2 things that I did not say, and I'm going to always correct you when people do that.
Okay, I'll correct myself. You said that the program was not broken.
Yes,
they were 6-14. They were 6-14 in conference play before Kenny Payne showed up on the 18th day of March. On the 18th day of March, were there records of the relationships established with recruits in the pipeline for the University of Louisville?
Are you asking, was the previous staff recruiting players? Yeah.
And was that information made available to Kenny Payne? Was there any way to bridge that gap and build those relationships starting on the 18th day of March?
Well, the 18th of March, it was an interim coach, not the previous head coach. So that was already in play before he got here. So, I mean, I think you are. I don't really know where you're going with this, other than just wanting to let it be known that you believe that, in fact, that Kenny is in fact inheriting something that's broken, but broken, damaged, whatever. Do you believe that right now? Do you believe right now they are where they are 2 years, or year and a half in year 2 here? You think that Kenny deserves no accountability for that? Like it's all everybody else's fault?
Do I think that Kenny could have done better? It's possible. Hindsight
it's possible?
And playing armchair quarterback.
It's possible?
Yeah, well, hold on a second, Nick. Now, I've asked you not to interrupt me, but you keep doing that. Wait till I finish and let me surmise before you critique what I've said.
Well, I got to tell you something.
Hold on a second.
This is my show, and I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm not interrupting you and cutting you off. I am now, because I don't think you understand how this works. We can have a conversation and go back and forth. I've not run you off the air. I've not told you, thanks for the call, we'll see you later. But I'm going to go back and forth, and I think that's how a conversation works. I'm not cutting you off. If you thought you could call in and you already complained about holding for 12 minutes, which, just so you know, a lot of people hold longer than that. So I apologize if you feel like you've wasted your time. You can speak. We will have a conversation. But this is not where I just stop talking and let you ramble for however long you want to ramble. And I'm not, let me back up. I apologize. You're not rambling, but anytime I say anything in response, you act as if I'm not allowed to do that, which, I am.
I can assure you I'm far from rambling. I have a lot of facts based off of what you've been talking about. You said the University of Louisville was in good shape.
I did not. You've said that now 3 times. I'm going to always interrupt you and tell you that I did not say that. I'm careful with what I say when it comes to those kind of things, because it would be untrue. The program was not in great shape. I never said that. I never said it was in good shape. But to a year and a half later still speak as if you are fixing a mess, cleaning up a mess, that's just, even if it's true, why say it? You think that's going to help you? Do you think that's going to make people, it's him playing a victim. Even if he was a victim, which I don't believe he is, at least not right now, why not just buckle down, work your tail off, coach these guys up, and embrace the fact that you've got a big challenge here? That's the way I think most coaches would approach it.
The University of Louisville was not a broken program when Kenny took over on the 18th day of March, 2022.
They were not? I thought you said they were.
No, you said that they weren't. I'm agreeing with you. It's not a broken program. Nick, let me ask you something. When was the last time the University of Louisville signed a top 5 recruiting class in basketball?
I don't know that they ever have.
Okay, so we can assume that your level of not broken is a lot lower than somebody else. Number 2, Kenny Payne signed 2 kids his first recruiting class. Why is that? As a matter of fact, I'll tell you straight up, I'm a University of Kentucky fan.
Oh, you don't say. Nobody would have guessed that. You really fooled us, man. I know where you're coming from. I know what you're doing, and I'm going to give you the chance to interact. But you could be a little less obvious next time. You claim you know all this stuff, and I know where you probably get that information. There's no doubt there are kids that would have not considered Louisville when Kenny first got here because of the obvious situation that had nothing to do with him. That's true. But I also know of kids that would have come to play here. I know for a fact. And he didn't want to pursue them. He didn't want them because he said that bringing in transfers that are veterans is not the right way to build it. The leading scorer at Missouri right now is a guy named Sean East. I know firsthand, him, his family, he wanted to play here. They didn't want him. And that to me is a mistake. That's something that could have helped you. He didn't want to do it. That is him right out of the gate, in my opinion, making a poor decision. So, we'll never know. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up because there's no doubt when he first got here, building the roster at that point would have been difficult. But I can tell you there are guys that wanted to come here that would have helped, that would have just taken up scholarships that he didn't use, and he didn't pursue them. And I think that's a mistake.
For a mistake for who? The University of Louisville, or for the young man that he didn't offer the scholarship?
It's a mistake for Kenny Payne to not be able to evaluate players that could come in and help you.
Help how?
Give you a better team because they can play. They went and got Fabio Basili, who cannot play here and is now playing at the lowest level of D1 basketball as a reserve. Why would you pursue him and not go get a kid who, again, has been an experienced kid that could transfer? Like, I mean, look, thanks for the call. I kept that conversation going longer than I probably needed to, but I didn't want you to try to run with the fact that I wasn't going to let you have a conversation. But like, you're running with a narrative, and I know where you're getting it. I know where it's coming from, and that's fine. I mean, you claim you got all these facts, all this and that. Like, you're listening to Jerry's show, and I love these facts that people claim, and I don't even know what they are. I mean, I asked you to tell me your facts, you didn't. So again, thank you for the call. You started off by literally saying something that I did not say, and that led to us starting this thing on the wrong side. And I will always, as long as I have the platform, will not let people say that I said things that I didn't say. But it is the best example because I'm saying that it wasn't broken and that what's happening right now, anybody who thinks right now's results have anything to do with the previous coaching staff, like what? Kenny told on himself. He flipped the roster. He went and got a really good recruiting class. Which, wouldn't you think that means expectations are higher? And, unfortunately, and I don't even blame Kenny for this, the Flowers situation, I think he got burned by the kid. I don't think that he could have done much to prevent that. And as I've said, if they knew they could get him, but they didn't pursue Flowers because they thought he may bail and go elsewhere, we would have crushed Kenny for not going after the kid. So that, I don't blame him for that. The Dennis Evans thing, total, bad luck, just a terrible injury situation that has led to, him not being able to play basketball right now. So I don't blame him for that. But he told on himself. He went out and got a really good class on paper, and two of the guys didn't end up in the mix, and that's unfortunate, but not his fault. And he also got Scott Clark and Trey White. Like, him going out and getting new players that on paper made it look as if they were going to be a better team. I mean, he proved that he can do that. So, why are they 6-11? And if you are, this is what, I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll say it just to end this conversation and take our last break. If you believe that anybody that follows college basketball, that covers it, that is involved in it as a coach, assistant coach, if you think they're looking at the Louisville situation and believing that Kenny Payne is anything other than a really bad coach and that this isn't working out, like you're on your own planet. I mean, coaches who coach against Louisville, coaches who scout when they're going to play Louisville, they're not going to come out and dog the opposing coach. They don't understand how Louisville's as bad as they are. So I don't really know I feel like we wasted too much time on that whole thing. And I mean, I always want people to feel like they can call in and interact, but we're going to have a conversation. But if you start by getting on the air and then telling me, like, did you think we were waiting for you, Doug? Like, you called us, bro. We're not, we didn't call you. Again, if 12 minutes is going to lead to you just starting the conversation by saying I don't know, and I have to wait that long. Well, you hang up then. I've been waiting for you.
Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones. Tomorrow at 10 on Sports Talk 790.
Show you how to get your shine on, shine on. Turn it up, DJ play the lines on.
You're listening to Coffey and Company with Nick Coffey on Sports Talk 790.
All right, we got just a few minutes left here before we wrap things up and say goodbye. The last segment, I feel like I need to not apologize, certainly not to Doug, but to, when I said this is my show, I know what it sounded like and I know how it comes across. I mean, it is my show, but it's not that I'm acting like, it's my show and you're beneath me and you should be, you should be in honor to be on the play. That's not what it meant. And I hope it didn't come across that way. But what I mean is that this is somebody who clearly just assumed because he picked up the phone and he dialed 7 numbers that when he gets on the air, he's running. It's his show and I got to shut up. Like, that's not how this works at all. And there's a show on this station in the morning that does operate that way. And I guess that's why he felt like that's how this is going to work. But, and John, you made a good point. Bringing up the fact that he was a Kentucky fan, that had nothing to do with the conversation.
It's like he was just trying to throw you off or throw the conversation.
To me, he made it worse for himself because he made it make more sense as to why he's doing that, because he, probably was a big fan of Kenny Payne at Kentucky as an assistant and wants to believe that, Louisville's the reason that Louisville's this bad and that Kenny's not responsible for it at all. And he can believe that. That's fine. He can have his own opinion, but, it's not true. And I'm not going to change his opinion. Like, that's somebody that, there's no point. Again, gave him a chance to talk and he shared what he had to say. I disagree with it, but then he would just say things that aren't true. And I have a hard, saying 3 times that I'd said something I didn't say, I'm going to always, defend myself. So when that happens, I feel like, well, there may be people who thought about calling in, but maybe won't now. And I hate that that's the case, but if you are a host of a show, in my opinion, I'm sure others see it differently, and you let callers just run with it and share an opinion, that's totally fine. Because that's what they do. They call you because they want to share said opinion. And at times, though, I think you have to let the listeners know that you disagree. You don't have to be, you don't even have to insult them or anything, but just, well, I disagree and move on. Because what happens is if your callers start running with certain things, the listeners may think that that you feel the same way. And what he said is, it's not like it's controversial or anything like that, but it just blows my mind that there are callers like that guy who are of the belief that Louisville is the problem and not Kenny. And I don't know if they realize that 99% of anybody, whether it be internally here in Louisville as fans and people who are, cover the sport or follow the sport or watch the sport objectively, like, nobody sees it that way. And you would think that maybe they'd realize, maybe these other people have a point that, it shouldn't be this bad. But again, Kenny believes probably everything that guy said. And that, I think, tells you why we're here. It's because he still feels like a victim. And even if he was as big of a victim as he claims to be, how are you ever going to get better if in year 2 you still are blaming things on the previous regime? And I guess he didn't do that last night. He just was asked to make the comparison, to comment on the comparison of him and Hubert Davis. But, even this year when he lost to Kentucky Wesleyan, I think it was, or maybe it was the UMBC game. He went out of his way to talk about a broken program and inheriting a mess, and he's still cleaning it up. And nobody's asked him what he's cleaning. Like, that's, even if that was true, which it's not to that extent, bringing it up, how does that help anybody? Do you just want to sit here in misery and be a victim, or do you want to buckle down and win and get this thing turned around? I've never seen anything that makes me believe that he truly is invested and believes that things are going to get better. And if that's the case, what are you doing here? Anyways, I hate how this show ended because I started by saying we weren't going to go down this path, and we did. All right, everybody enjoy their night. Stay safe. I don't know if the weather is bad just yet, but we may get some snow and it's going to be cold. So again, stay safe. Have a good night. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here. This has been another edition of Coffey and Company, fueled by Thornton's on Sports Talk 790.